Hi, my name is Kevin Mack. I'm the head instructor of Krav Maga Nation based in Philadelphia. This next drill is something that we do in all our schools. Every one of our instructors has seen this, and I talk about this a lot in class because this is one of the drills that comes from one of Imi's original strategies in Krav Maga. Now, Imi had a background as a boxer, as a wrestler, as a gymnast. And a lot of basic original techniques in our delivery system in Krav Maga comes from that. And it's not just the techniques, though. Imi brought to Israel certain strategies he discovered street fighting back home in Bratislava. At the time before Imi left Bratislava and made his way to Palestine, fascism was taking root in Europe. And at that time, Bratislava started having fascist gangs start to come and take root in his country. And Imi was a well-known athlete in the Jewish community. And he was known as being a gentleman, but he was also known for being just a warrior, a good fighter and a good athlete. And he would organize a couple groups of his students because Imi would always stand up and fight whenever some of these fascist gangs would come and start fights. Kind of like, modern equivalent would be like the Nazi skinheads. Nazi skinheads never go into gangbanger neighborhoods and start fighting with the Crips or the Bloods. They always pick somebody who's isolated, some, a 60-year-old immigrant, and just jump them. They're strong in packs, but one-on-one, they're not going to fight somebody who can stand up against them. And that was happening in Bratislava. And Imi would stand up for himself, but he also would stand up for other people. And he organized some of the guys that were training at his gym, people he knew, and they would come out and they'd fight back. And Imi developed certain things, some strategies that he learned. Sometimes he may have learned them from a mistake, sometimes he learned it from a win. And those concepts came with him and entered Israel and entered the Krav Maga system. And one of them is something we still do to this day, and it deals with multiple attackers. One of the things Imi realized early on, when you're surrounded and you're outnumbered by like 10, 12 people, you can't spend a lot of time on one. You can't get that tunnel vision. I always use the example of like zombie movies. You have very slow-moving zombies, not a lot of muscle strength, and you can push one down, you can take two down, maybe three, but eventually if your back's exposed, you're just going to get swarmed. So now if that person's weakness is this much, you now have 50 of them, their strength is this much. So Imi realized early on he had to protect his back. And what he would do is he would find a wall. If he was outnumbered by guys, he would find a wall, put his back up against the wall, and now he knew his back was safe, and he knew he wasn't exposed. But he also knew that if there was 10 guys here and he was punching them and spending time clinching and throwing elbows, one other person would jump in, two other people. Street fighting's not like the movies. You don't get surrounded by guys and they take their turns coming in. They see you exposed and they sucker punch you from behind. So Imi said he would put his heel up against the wall. You don't put your back up against the wall, just your heel so you know where it is. And then you punch as hard as you can, just one shot. And he's like, I knew I had to hit him with one shot and it had to be as hard as I could. So he punched once, punched twice, and keep moving. And when my instructor went to Israel and heard this from Imi and heard it from his students, he thought it was, a little hyperbole. Students always build up their instructors. People have legends spread about them. And one time, Alan was in a cafe in Netanya, Israel, with Imi, and Imi got up to use the restroom. And a very old man leaned over from the table, 2 tables away, and says, your instructor, Imi, you're very lucky to be training with him. I remember him back in Bratislava. He'd be outnumbered by 20 guys. He'd put his back up against the wall, and he would be knocking these guys out. And that's when my instructor, Alan Feldman, realized, wow, it's like those legends are true. And Imi wasn't out spreading them. He wasn't telling everybody, but everything he had heard from his students and people around existed, and they were real. And now that gave validity not only to the stories, but to Imi's ideas, but the concepts and the strategies. And if you watch the news, gang attacks or swarms of groups of attacks are very common. So we do this drill now. This is something you can do in your school to work that same concept that Imi did, some of his early strategies. What we do is you have one student, their back against the wall, their heel up against the wall. They're in their fighting stance. The rest of the students are in a circle around them, but it's kind of like an oval circle, like a half egg cut in half, okay? So, come here. So now, Jeff is in the middle. You're going to close this a little bit more. He's going to move from one pad to the other, throwing just the hardest right punch he can. Go! He's using his vision to watch his back. He's scanning, using his peripheral vision, left and right, to see if somebody's moving. You may have to switch to a left punch once in a while, but he's trying to not get tunnel vision. He's trying to throw one punch, maybe two punches, but he's moving, constantly moving, not exposing his back. Time. This is something you can do in your school to work, multiple attacker defense. It's a strategy and a concept that has been in Krav Maga not only since day one, but prior to day one. Something Imi developed on the streets, and it's something we can incorporate. And, it's the lineage, but it's also the idea that this works. And let's take advantage of this. What Imi knew, what he taught us, let's learn it, and let's learn it with depth and see how it can apply to a variety of things that we do. And strategies against multiple attackers. This is one drill to deal with that. Make sure your back doesn't come too far off the wall. And there's varieties of things you can do that are similar to this. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at KravMagaNation.net or PhiladelphiaKravMaga.com. My name is Kevin Mack. Thanks.